Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is indeed Avrum Rosensweig. This episode is lovingly dedicated by Mayor Rosensweig and his family to his dear brother Shruggy and to Shruggy's wife Dee Dee and kids on one of their boys' bar mitzvah, David, coming up next week. We celebrate the milestone of Torah, tradition, family, and faith. May David continue to grow in wisdom, kindness, and strength, bringing pride to his family and blessings to the Jewish people for many years to come. Mazel tov. Welcome to the show. You know, there are moments in history when remaining silent is easier than speaking out. And there are those individuals who choose to speak anyway, despite the personal cost. Today, I am honored to welcome such a person, Professor Paul Finlayson. How are you, Paul?
I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. For 15 years, Paul was a respected educator, an author, a marketing professor at the University of Guelph-Humber. Following the horrific Hamas attack on October 7, 2023, Paul publicly expressed his support for Israel and condemned terrorism. What followed would dramatically alter the course of his life and career. According to Paul, his comments sparked complaints, an extended suspension, and ultimately the termination of his position at the university. Paul is not Jewish, yet he found himself at the center of a national conversation about free expression, academic freedom, anti-Semitism, and the growing tensions surrounding discussion of Israel on university campuses. His story has generated widespread debate across Canada and beyond. In this conversation, we will explore what happened behind the scenes, the personal toll of standing by one's convictions, the state of free speech in higher education, and why Paul believes that supporting the Jewish people and the state of Israel was a moral imperative that he simply could not abandon. Whether you agree with him or not, Paul Finlayson's journey raises profound questions about courage, conscience, and the price some people pay for expressing their beliefs. This is a conversation about principle. It is a conversation about freedom. The Talmud, compiled nearly 1,800 years ago, teaches that righteous people from every nation have a share in the world to come. And that would include Paul Finlayson, my guest today, not Jewish, not Israeli, a Canadian professor who chose to stand publicly against terrorism, to support Israel, and to speak according to his conscience when remaining silent would have been a lot easier. As Paul himself has said, I'm not Jewish, I am a Zionist, and I am entitled to say that. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Paul Finlayson and in honoring the courage it takes to stand for one's convictions when the cost is very real. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Good to be here again.
It's great to have you. Great to have you. We met recently. I made a Shabbat dinner for about 30 of my friends, and you were our guest of honor. And I must tell you, to start things off, that you were greatly respected, and people felt as though the evening was a big success, in part because you were there with us and spoke about what you have gone through. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah, it was a wonderful evening. I was so happy to be there.
Have you ever been at a Shabbat dinner?
No, I haven't. That was my first, but I won't forget.
What was your take on it?
This sounds somewhat primitive. The food was excellent, and but just people are extraordinarily kind, and the idea of singing songs that go back perhaps thousands of years by heart was just tremendous, and just the sense of community. And it wasn't all about the food, it was about the community, really. And I felt at home. I felt welcomed. And I'm not a person who loves crowds and loves things like that. And I felt welcomed.
Yeah, join the crowd. I'm not either. And thank you for bringing the cider.
I drank it all myself.
I know you did. Can I ask you something? You said that you've never been at a Shabbat dinner before. What exposure have you had to the Jewish people in your life?
Um, I went to for at least some of my secondary schooling. I went to a private school in Winnipeg, St. John's Ravenscourt, and we certainly had a fair number of Jewish students there. And I mean, they seemed nice enough to me, and I read a lot of Leon Heuris books growing up, and grew to love the nation of Israel and the Israeli people, and studied the Holocaust. And when I was a teenager on my own, I went to Auschwitz in Poland and to Dachau, and it just it just stuck in my heart. I have no formal connection to anybody Jewish. I didn't marry Jewish, but I'm I was just shocked by October 7th, and things rolled from there.
Where were you on October 7th?
I was at school, if I remember right, and I guess it was sort of surreal. And what upset me was the bodies literally were still warm. I'm not a doctor, but I know bodies stay warm for a certain amount of time. And Israel was already starting to be condemned, and my university issued some sort of platitudinous, just some sort of vapid comment that seemed to draw no moral delineation between terrorists who fly in on paragliders and murder teenagers and the victims themselves. And I was offended by it.
Do you remember any of the content of that release?
I don't remember the exact wording. I thought it was just rather empty, and I thought it we try and stand in the center of polarities, and it's sort of an anti-intellectual position. I think you should stand on the side of what's right, not just in the middle. And it seemed just a fairly naked attempt to not offend Muslim constituency, and giving some sort of token respect to Jewish students, staff and faculty, or people like me.
Let's give our viewers today a bit of a context on your professorship, your career. You were a professor in very high standing. In fact, I went online and I took a look at, I don't know if you're familiar with it, ratemyprofessor.com. You got a very, very high standing. Here's a remark from one of your students. I remember this professor from my first few years at Guelph-Humber, and he was so amazing. Loved his cynical sense of humor. He was open to having conversations regarding controversial topics like politics, which I found very refreshing coming from a university professor who typically have to be very careful with what they say and their own opinions. Another person said, still think about this prof from my first year. He was so funny and made class enjoyable. Your students really liked you. And from our discussions and from what I've read, it sounds like you had a very, very good relationship, good camaraderie going on with your colleagues. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I love teaching. I loved my students. I'd sort of found something that I really wanted to do. And I was sort of Mr. Popular. I would walk down the hallway and I'd hear my name, and my classes were quite lighthearted, and I made myself available to students. My office was often full of students. I gave out my personal phone number for project work, and I really gave it my heart. And very often I was the last car in the parking lot. I wrote my own textbooks for my courses. I wrote my own test banks. I wanted to do things right. I believe in education. My dad was a professor. My mom was a teacher. And I had found something that I really loved, and I thought it was an important period for my students and those 4 years in university. And I did my best to show kindness and help them, and it was going very well, but it came crashing down, unfortunately.
Prior to all this that ultimately happened to you, and we'll discuss that in a moment, did you have a sense that the University of Guelph and perhaps the whole industry of universities was living up to the ideas, sort of the formulas set out for universities of free speech? You know, the ability to speak openly about what you were feeling and sensing. Were you allowed to have these debates and arguments, not only about Israel, but other issues in the world that might be considered, you know, contentious in other environments?
I had my best conversations with students, and I was somewhat careful. Faculty really didn't want to discuss anything, and the management just stayed in their offices and never came down uh, to visit. So there wasn't a great spirit of, you know, open debate or open inquiry. And but my only experience was management, is when I'd gotten angry at students for refusing to read a book that was 280 pages that I'd written. It was the textbook, because they thought it was too much for them, and that I I said something not terribly flattered, and some student complained, and 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 management, of course, supported them, and but it sort of blew over fairly quickly. That was my only experience, but it wasn't a highly politicized um, university, really. And I was teaching courses that were not tied to politics or religion; they were tied to culture and psychology more.
You were teaching marketing, right?
Yeah, marketing, consumer behavior, relationship marketing, and social media marketing.
Hmm. So October 7th comes and it goes. The response of the world is varied, but as you said, phenomenally, shortly after this major terrorist attack happened, people say the greatest attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. November comes, as it always does, and you're on LinkedIn, and you see there a man, I believe from Pakistan, who's
Yes,
calling for the destruction of Israel. What was your response to him?
I was angry. Angry. I have two children now. They're 19, 25. Um, and that would have been, almost 3 years ago. So you do the math. And my daughter, if we lived in Israel, my daughter, the way she is, she's very social. She loves music. She totally would have been at that festival. Okay. And I was thinking,
The Nova
before
Festival. You're talking about the Nova
the
Festival.
Nova Festival, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
thinking before God. I mean, they're all our children, and just uh, and it was a massacre of the innocent, and so incredibly cruel. And then this guy in Pakistan who calls himself an academic, and I thought he was soiling. I take academia quite seriously, and he's just going off against Israel. And I just said, I stood with Israel, and if you stand with Israel, you stand. Sorry, if you stand with Hamas, you stand with Nazis, alluding to the historical relationship between the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. And then I just went through a roll of Hamas crimes. I didn't take it too seriously. It was the type of comment that people make on Twitter, millions of times a day. Um, but then word came back that somehow one student or the guy in Pakistan had contacted the university, but they were after me.
I received a note from a friend of mine and a colleague, former colleague, who asked me to ask you specifically what your words were in response to this Pakistani academic. And she sent me an outtake, something that she captured, which says, you saying, if you stand with Palestine, it means you stand with Hitler.
See, there's some. I know what I wrote. See, I didn't go back and read it. because a student said someone's upset, uh, and so I said, whatever, I'll delete it. Uh, I believe, and everything I got after that point was a JPEG. That's the digital format. And I believe I'd said, if you stand with Palestinian Gov, because all I had talked about with Hamas was Hamas, it didn't really make sense that suddenly I would go to talking about some little grandma in Gaza. And I'm going, that's not what I said. But I don't have a forensic copy of what I said. The guy who I responded to deleted his post instantly. No one ever saw it again. And all we have is this student screenshot, which is a JPEG that's been altered. And I was talking about Hamas the whole thing, so I don't know why I would have said Palestinian people. But to be honest, the line between the Palestinian people and Hamas, I mean, they celebrated the hostages. They wouldn't release the hostages. About 600 Palestinians on October 7th went in with Hamas, the so-called, even the uniformed Hamas. They went in there with them and massacred Jews, non-Jews, Filipinos, whomever. So the line there is pretty thin, anyways. But I know what I know what I was talking. I mean, the intro sentence is talking about Hamas, and it just doesn't make sense. And when I'm talking about the relationship between the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas, and to see that suddenly I'm saying I remember thinking, if not writing, Palestinian Gov, and suddenly it's been removed and replaced with Palestinians. So,
but just for clarification, excuse me, so we can put this out of the way. Would you like to see peace between Israel and the Palestinians, or a situation where they can live according to their governance and we can live according to ours?
Of course, any sane person wants to see peace between two people, but I think one group, almost in totality, is opposed to it. It's their essence of a people is that they can't stand. They cannot live next to rich and successful Jews. They don't want it. And all the interviews of Palestinians, and in the West Bank, even more extreme than Gaza, is that it's either a one-state solution that's shared, or it's a one-state solution in which all the Israelis are driven out or killed.
So November comes around, and you post what you post. November 27th, 2023, the University of Guelph-Humber suspends you from teaching position pending an investigation into complaints related to your social media activity. From all the information that I read about that time, which seemed to be very difficult for you, it seems as though they called you in with a preconceived knowledge of what they wanted to do, and that was to suspend you and ultimately terminate you. Can you walk us through that time period and what happened?
Sure. I was meeting a student in my office about a presentation, and the assistant department head was just acting very nervous and kept poking her head in the door and saying, "Can you meet? Can you meet? Can you meet?" I thought I was meeting about bereavement leave, because I had written the vice provost about that, and my dad had passed away not far back, so I had no idea. And then I just get to finally I go up to their meeting, and some person from human rights that I don't know is there. Not human rights, human resources. And then the assistant vice provost, he just sort of rams the note in my face. And I say, "What's this about?" He goes, "Some social media post." And I go, "What social media post?" And he goes, "I don't know. I haven't read anything." And then they gagged me, said, "You can't talk to anybody." staff, faculty, students, past, present, future, and threw me off campus. And I still didn't know why. And then I started getting phone calls within hours of students that had my number, that liked me, that knew me, and said, Paul, why is staff and faculty going around from student to student in the atrium of the physical building? And I got this from 5 students, okay? 5 students, so it wasn't just one person. And I got screenshots of the same staff members trying to convince people from another student. And they were saying 3 things. They said, the reason that you're suspended is not because of a social media post, because we don't even know what it is at this point. It's because you assaulted a student, ripped his shirt, and were handcuffed and led away. That you have a 5-year history of criminality. And then the third thing, and all the same thing was told to all the students and faculty were repeating this in front of classes, according to students, because it seemed they'd been instructed, and saying that senior management, and there's only 2 at University of Guelph-Humber. It's a very small university, 5,500 students. Senior administration has said that no matter what happens, you will be terminated. And I, just using basic logic, there's only 2 senior administrators. One is the guy who had just suspended me, and he said he didn't know why himself. So it just leads one person, the vice provost, Melanie Spencer-Rima. So that was my first day, being thrown off campus, not knowing why. I later had my union tell me that they considered me calling Hamas Nazis a hate crime. And then this deliberate defamation about some apparent assault and 5-year history of criminality, and asserting that I would be terminated no matter what. So they essentially said that the judicial so-called process was a farce. They announced that on day 1. I mean, I have a screenshot of it. So
if you were to have assaulted a student and were led away in handcuffs in today's day and age, where people just pop out their phones and take pictures and videos of these things, I'm pretty certain that somebody would have had a video of this. Would that not be right?
I would think so. They said it happened in a classroom where every student has a phone. There's cameras everywhere. There are police records if you're handcuffed. There's security reports. And but the sad thing is, the students, not all, they came to believe it. People will believe things when people want to believe the worst. They don't need evidence, really. But yeah, it's sort of ridiculous. But within a couple weeks, a student said, "I'm sorry, but this is widely believed. This is not a rumor. This is not a few people in a corner saying, whispering gossip. This is what people believe." And I had a Jewish student say, "I tried to stop them. I tried to stop them. 20 people told this to me. I couldn't stop it." And so, you build your reputation up fairly slowly in teaching or academia, and it all was destroyed maliciously and deliberately in the matter of weeks. And when I tried to stop the defamation, I received a letter from the head of public safety saying that if I contacted any student, because they said me asking people to stop defaming me was me breaking this arbitrary gag order that they'd given me, which was unlawful anyways. And they threatened to have me charged with criminal harassment. And they copied Division 22 and 23 of, I guess, Toronto Police. I'm not sure. I think it'd be Toronto Police. So they were really, they wanted this defamation to run, and they wanted to run powerfully, and they did not want me interfering with it. And they were very vicious. It just wasn't public safety. It was lawyers threatening me with huge fines and undetermined consequences and defamation. And when a multi-million-dollar organization threatens you, in my opinion anyways, in Canada, they're sort of always threatening your home, because because you can't fight legally with an organization that has taxpayer funded, and they have essentially unlimited budget. They've spent probably between well over $1 million. Like I've worked it out. It's a conservative estimate. They'll probably end up over 2 fighting me on lawyers and other expenses. I mean, they're all in on this, and I think the biggest part of the story that's not mentioned enough is the deliberate seeding of defamatory material starting on day one. And then I received the human rights complaint about a month later, and it matches, and that's from the vice provost. It matches the defamation almost exactly. It's more granular, but it matches it. So it seemed it came from the same spot, and that human rights complaint was filed by the head of the university.
You were threatened with a $10,000 fine, as you alluded to, for just going on campus. In calculating how much money you will probably lose till the end of your life, it's somewhere in the area of $1.8 million. Around April of 2024, your case received national attention through an interview on the podcast North Star with Ellen Bessner. In July, reports emerged that your employment has been formally terminated. That's July of 2025 by the University of Guelph-Humber. That dismissal was discussed in an interview on the Honest Report podcast. You know, what comes to mind, Paul, is that what you went through and what you're going through, it's Kafkaesque. It's surreal. And I am wondering, what was happening in your heart? What was happening in your head? What was your family going through as all of this terrible stuff was unfolding?
Kafkaesque is a good way of putting it, and I think sometimes we overuse that in a cliched sense, but you're actually using it very accurately. And it was surreal. It was, am I going to wake up and this is all going to be gone? My daughter had many friends who attended Guelph-Humber. So it obviously went into the family. I had really given this institution my heart, and the woman, Spencer Rima, who filed this human rights complaint along with her friend and accuser, this professor, Islamist professor, Wael Ramadan, not one of them had ever spoken to me. They didn't respond to email. I mean, I didn't try with him, but she didn't talk to me about this on the phone. Human rights didn't talk to me on this phone. They didn't respond to email. They didn't meet with me. They had this radical Islamist guy who's calling Jews filth, subhuman, devil worshippers, posting pictures of Israel burned on fire and saying, saying really disgusting things about, Jews being pedophiles and stuff like that, or insinuating that. And he's treated like a king and coddled by the institution. My accuser says these horrible things, and this organization that I had given my heart to. And I was sort of losing it. I was staying up all night. I canceled I didn't go with my family on a vacation over Christmas. Remember, I was suspended in November. And because I was trying to defend myself, I was trying to defend my honor, my reputation. I was called a safety risk to children, and you and I both know what that implies. And the most hurtful, damaging things. And I was desperately trying to play an amateur lawyer, and I remember sitting on the couch with my dogs, who are by my side now, and seeing the sun come up. And I had been up all night working on documents and working on this and that. And at one point, a friend took me to KMH and said, Paul, you're losing it. You're going, and they diagnosed me with stress-based disorder like PTSD. And ended up filing a complaint through WSIB, Workers' Comp Board, which was approved, which they found the university and college and union guilty of defamatory abuse and abuse in general. But I was, I can put on this show of defiance and talk about the points and the issues and the how the human rights code was violated, the collective agreement, how my union abandoned me, and these are all points. But on the inside, I felt an immense sense of betrayal. I felt complete betrayal by senior management and senior people at University of Guelph. Not one of them ever spoke to me. They terminated me without speaking to me. I never did get a defense. I never got a defense. They hired someone to rubber stamp a verdict that they admitted they made on day one. And they didn't read my appeals. They canceled the disciplinary meeting, and it was surreal. I've had many, Muslim students in my class. I treated the girls with hijabs on with extra kindness, and I made sure that they were involved in the class. And I treated these people with kindness and went above and beyond constantly and did so many favors. And some students, like one student, he had been in a group and he had done too much work, and somehow his mother ended up calling me or something. And I worked through it with the family. You're not supposed to do that at university. And I treated him with such fairness. And I had taught his brother, and he turned out to be one of the people who was going around defaming me. And I just felt that I had no friends suddenly. I thought I had many friends, but I had acquaintances, and sometimes acquaintances, I mean, it seemed when any pressure was applied, they abandoned me. And a few professors sort of supported me on the sly, but they were too, afraid of losing their own job. And very, very few people, nobody stood up publicly to support me, and very few people even silently did. And some old friends heard horrible things about me that just had no truth, and they believed them, and they crossed the street when I came coming because they heard these things. And it was, I found it pretty soul crushing.
Yeah, I can see that. And I'm so sorry that you've had to go through this. It's terrible. And the thing that occurs to me is you're not a Jew, but you're experiencing the depth of anti-Semitism in its own way. What do you attribute this vile hatred to, Paul? Why do they hate the Jewish people so much? And then subsequently you, because you went to bat for Israel and the Jewish people.
It's a good question. I have my own Substack now, which I started after in October of 2023, and I've addressed it there and trying to find the headwaters of anti-Semitism. Some people say it's envy. I just don't think. I think there's some truth to that. It's just an ancient evil, and humanity loves scapegoats. And but to be honest, it seems like there's almost something supernatural there. It's just a hatred without reason. And I don't know, just sort of an omnipresent evil that has existed for millennia, which has existed for all of recorded history. And I don't know why, but it's I mean, I've done research on it, and Jewish people give more to charity than any other religious group. Obviously, they win a lot of Nobel Prizes. They develop cures for childhood diseases. They do these great things, but it's not that they haven't done it enough. It's that people will hate them no matter what. If they're not all angels, even if they were all angels, they would be hated. So I'm not answering your question. I don't know. but I walked the ruins of Auschwitz and Dachau. I will not forget that. And I looked at the pictures there, and it wasn't pleasant. And all I can do is say that I will not join that chorus. And I decided that at a young age, and I'm sticking with it, I guess. But I don't know where this evil comes from.
I spoke to some organizational people prior to this interview to get an understanding and context of the last 3 years having to do with your situation vis-a-vis the Jewish community, how the Jewish community dealt with it. I found that there were organizations and media outlets that were highly supportive of you, and then some weren't. I wasn't quite sure why. Sometimes there are mainstream organizations that lack the courage to stand up at the proper times. But my question to you is, having gone through this terrible situation, how do you feel the Jewish community supported you or did not?
I think that the Jewish community has been tremendous overall. It's not the Christian community. I'm a Christian. I mean, my own relatives, to be honest, haven't openly gone against me. A few have, but like my own twin brother doesn't support me on this. My sister is just sort of has left it alone. I have a lot of relatives out west. They knew all about it. Really no support. So I would feel to sit there and nitpick with the people I have no actual affiliation with, officially Jewish people, to say they haven't done enough when they've done a lot would seem nitpicky. It's people like you and people really middle class, ordinary people. I hope you don't object to being called ordinary.
It's all good.
But who, like on Everything Jewish Toronto, who have been tremendous. Organizations like CJA, I had big hopes for them, and they said they would support me, and they gave me about an hour's worth of time with one of their lawyers, helped me edit an appeal that I had written. And she was very nice, and she did undoubtedly a good job, but the appeal was never read. So it was tossed in the garbage by the institution, in all figuratively anyway. And B'nai B'rith did never responded to an email. And I was at an event at a shul, I guess a week ago, called Faith Not Fear. And the B'nai B'rith guy gives out his email as he's speaking from the podium and says, well, I'll respond to you. We'll respond to you. And so I wrote him during his talk on my phone. Of course, he didn't respond. So I'm not sure why the big organizations, Simon Wiesenthal, I know I'm not the most important. I'm not the biggest story in Canada or in Toronto. But I would have thought that I would get the courtesy of a response, and I didn't even get that. So the big Jewish organizations are a mystery, but the individual Jewish people are amazing. Like this woman Tammy just started a GoFundMe for my legal expenses. I guess that's still going on, and it's been quite successful. She owed me nothing. She's not a professional fundraiser. She's not a lawyer. She's a teacher. And she just decided she wanted to do something. And I've had a lot of people like that, but it's more the so-called common people that have stepped up from the Jewish nation. And the big organizations, I've tried to figure them out for 2.5 years. I don't think I'm going to ever figure them out. And it is what it is. I'm thankful for the support I have got. I mean, I don't think that this is going to, I've done everything I could. I've fought like hell. I don't think it's going to end well. It's not going to be the glorious walking down the courtroom steps with some document and vindication. My reputation's been destroyed by lies that can't come back. My job will not come back. I will survive. I will rebuild. But yeah, I wished the big Jewish organizations D-, the individual Jews A+.
Paul, there have been people throughout history who have done what you have done, which is step up for the Jewish people or other minorities courageously and bravely because they believed that what they were doing was correct. There is a fellow, Gunther Jekeli, who's is a scholar specializing in contemporary anti-Semitism and Jewish studies. He's been a prominent academic voice examining anti-Semitism and defending the legitimacy of Jewish self-determination and Israel's place in public discourse. Niall Ferguson, one of the world's leading historians, Ferguson has repeatedly condemned anti-Semitism, criticized anti-Israel extremism on campuses, and defended Israel's right to exist and defend itself. Following October 7th, he was among the academics warning about growing hostility toward Jewish students. Jordan Peterson, whom we all know, the Canadian psychologist and professor emeritus, has frequently spoken against anti-Semitism and has publicly defended Israel's right to security and self-defense. So you're part of a pretty auspicious group, I would say. When you look at yourself and see what you have done, how you have stood up so courageously and bravely in the wee hours of the night where you might find some peaceful moments, how do you see yourself in all of this?
I don't see myself in that level. I'm not Jordan Peterson or Niall Ferguson or any of God's side. I'm just sort of some stubborn guy of Irish descent who said, I'm not apologizing. I'm not backing down. I did nothing wrong. And the idea that my comments against Israel were parsed with this fine-tooth comb, and they saw so much there. But they had no problem with professors, Islamist professors, calling Jews Übermensch, calling them subhuman, and that type of rhetoric is rife amongst faculty and staff and students. You have students screaming F Zionists in the hallway at Guelph-Humber. You have the Palestinian flag on stage at Convocation. You have official social sites being connected to from the river to the sea. And you have the professor who was my accuser, who's friends with the VP, the functional president, who is one who got me fired. And they're saying they're being investigated by the police for hate propaganda. At least he was. And because it was hate propaganda, it's a criminal code violation. And they're letting all that go. And you know what the Bible says about the plank in your own eye. It's quite incredible. And but I don't see myself in the group. I'm just someone, a drowning man who reached out and was grabbed on by a bunch of ordinary Jewish people, and by God at some level, and just held afloat. But I'm not a martyr or noble. I mean, what I said was so boring and banal. I went against a terrorist group, and for some reason, the shocking thing is not what I said. It's the shocking thing is that other people don't say it, that it's not normal.
I want to read you a piece from AI that I prompted about individuals who do stand up, who are courageous like yourself. And it's a good piece. I'm a big fan of AI. Do you like AI?
Sure, yeah.
You do?
I
Okay.
just use ChatGPT most.
Yeah, me too. In an age when hatred too often disguises itself as virtue, the true hero stands firm. While others retreat into silence or bend to the pressure of popular opinion, this person speaks with clarity and courage on behalf of the Jewish people in the state of Israel. They understand that standing against anti Semitism is not a matter of politics, but of conscience. Their voice becomes a beacon, reminding the world that truth and justice are not determined by the loudest crowd, but by the strength of moral conviction. This brave man recognizes the long journey of the Jewish people, a history marked by resilience, creativity, faith, and survival against extraordinary odds. When ancient prejudices reemerge in modern forms, they refuse to look away. They challenge falsehoods, confront hatred, and defend the dignity of people who have contributed immeasurably to humanity. In moments when many choose comfort over principle, they choose integrity, understanding that silence in the face of bigotry only empowers those who spread it. For such a person, courage is not measured by applause, but by steadfastness. They stand beside Israel's right to exist in peace and security, and beside Jewish communities seeking nothing more than the freedom to live openly and safely. Their actions remind us that one voice, guided by truth and compassion, can make a difference. In honoring this hero, we honor the timeless value of decency, friendship, and moral courage, qualities that illuminate even the darkest of times. I must tell you that you may cringe a little bit when we use the word hero in reference to you, but as a Jew today, it is a very, very lonely experience.
I bet.
It is, Paul, and I think you probably heard much of that at our Friday night dinner. We stand alone in many, many corners of the world, not entirely. We do have non-Jewish friends, and it's important to recognize that. But over the last few years, the vile things that we have heard about the Jewish people and about Israel are terrifying. They're just terrifying to listen to. So when I read you this piece, and I call you a hero in it, or AI alludes to that. It's a very true feeling that I'm harboring, and so many of my family and friends and colleagues are feeling as well. Like what you have done gives us a sense of hope. It gives us a sense of strength, and I certainly want to take this moment to thank you for that, because more people need to do what you're doing.
I've had a lot of emotions, a lot of tears, a lot of anxiety and despair at times, but I've never had regret. That's the one thing I haven't had. And this might sound cheesy, but I'm pretty sure it was at Dachau. I was 19, maybe I turned 20. I was by myself, certainly. And I remember doing the tour, and there was this gouge in the stone, like a slot in the stone. And I said, and it was going through a couple layers in the stone down to the ground. And I said to the tour guide, I interrupted his speech. I said, "What's that for?" And he said, that's so that the blood of people can run down into a bucket. And I went outside and wept after that. And I remember Nova Music Festival and seeing what was happening, and seeing, like, I saw my daughter and those girls, and they've suffered so much. Many have lost their lives. And I feel if I could have backed down on this or done anything, if they had offered apologize and we'll give everything back, I would have said no, because I would have betrayed those people whose blood run down those gouges in the stone at Dachau, and who and those children who were massacred while they were dancing in their bare feet at the Nova Music Festival, and who were in their kibbutzes, and I felt I would be betraying them, and I'm not a rich man. I might not stand out for too much, but I'm not going to betray. I felt it would have been a betrayal to those those people, and to 40 years of at least intellectual allianceship with the Israeli nation. I'm a bit of a stubborn guy, and I wasn't backing down. They just made me more adamant. I've become more resolute in the last 2.5 years, not less.
Would you do anything different?
Not, I mean, I probably wouldn't have fought in it's so much of what I fought for was based on the assumption of natural justice and judicial procedural fairness, and I put so much effort into gathering evidence and to pursuing legal remedies and into assuming that in an academic institution that I would get given a defense. And the shunning was so cruel. They shunned me completely. And then they hired this lawyer from Sherrod Kutz, just a very cruel, immoral woman. And I'll say that. And she accused me of posting anti-Semitic material on my accuser while Ramadan. Like, she was going into conspiracy nuttery. Like, and I said, am I a time traveler that I've gone back in time before I even knew who these people were and done this? And I maybe wouldn't have put so much effort because I would have recognized the futility. And but I'll say this, all these PhDs and all these people with all this moral pretense, and not one of them has faced me. Not one has faced me. Not one has responded to an email. Not one has responded. As I'm calling them is apparently impossible. A meeting, they canceled my disciplinary meeting. And with all their academic credentials and supposed elitism and unearned self-righteousness, I think it speaks very badly of them that they still have denied me a right to adjudication. And then all they do is run away and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on lawyers. And those lawyers threaten me, abuse me, call me a liar. This one lawyer for the vice provost made another comment about me being a criminal, and they don't even practice law. They practice psychops and abuse, but not one of them will look me in the eye. And I said, I'll stand before all of you. You can bring all of your lawyers. I will come alone. Let's hash this out. And I think it speaks to their guilt, and to the guilt of University of Guelph, and to the guilt of Humber College, and to the guilt of University of Guelph-Humber and their confederates, that they have been afraid to stand before me because they know they're wrong. They know what they've done is wrong. Maybe in the depth of their subconscious, maybe hubris is masked over everything. I don't know. But my only regret is that so much of my building of evidence was futile. You have to understand that when you're gagged and you're banished, you're not allowed to talk to anyone, and you're thrown off campus. And when you talk to someone, you get threatening letters from lawyers. That it's really hard to build a defense. It's almost structurally impossible when you're kicked off campus and you can't talk to anybody at all. And see, this is the depth that they plumbed to, is that they say, where is your defense? And you can't talk to anyone. You can't come here. And when I went on campus once, and they acted like like I was some Viking raider, and I didn't even raise my voice. It was nothing. And they lied and exaggerated about that and demonized me. And I have no idea when you're called pretty close to a pedophile and a criminal on day one. before you've done anything. I've no criminal record. I've never raised my voice on campus. And you allow that to run unimpeded for months. Of course, in a few months, the nature of human beings, what they are, I was the devil on wheels. And not one of them, though, had the integrity to say, hey, Paul, is this true? Not one of them had the integrity as to say, well, why don't we have a discussion about this? And I think I've shown immensely more moral character, moral conviction. They've shown nothing, and I don't care about their credentials. I have more respect for a guy who digs graves as a job, who is willing to confront his accuser, than someone wearing, Prada suit who hides behind a lawyer.
Paul, I want to conclude with an ode to. This is another AI piece. I've been doing this for a number of months, prompting AI to write poems about my guest. This is called The Professor Who Would Not Be Silent. There comes a time in every age when truth steps trembling on a stage and acts a simple, solemn thing. Will conscience bow or will it sing? A professor stood within that hour, not seeking fame nor wealth nor power. He taught, he wrote, he shaped young minds, leaving quiet legacies behind. For years, he walked familiar halls, answered questions, graded calls, guided students toward their dreams, believing knowledge more than seems. Then came a day that shook the earth, a day of horror, of pain, and of dearth. The world watched flames and terror rise, and anguish filled the open skies. Many whispered, many hid, many measured what they did, but one man looked upon the night and chose to speak what he believed was right. He was not Jewish by his birth, yet felt compelled to take his stand. For hatred aims at any people, darkens every corner of the land. He spoke of Israel. He spoke against terror. He spoke against anti-Semitism. And soon he found himself the target. The classroom doors were closed behind him. Questions swirled without an end. Colleagues vanished into silence. Certainties refused to mend. The cost was real. The wounds were deep. The nights were long and robbed of sleep. Yet through the storm, through every test, he carried conviction in his chest. History remembers not the crowd who choose the comfort of retreat. It remembers those who stood their ground when principle and sacrifice would meet. And so this story is not merely of one professor's rise and fall. It is a timeless human question. Will we answer conscience call? For every generation learns anew that courage is a lonely art. And sometimes the strongest act of all is simply speaking from the heart. Paul Finlayson's journey reminds us that freedom lives in fragile hands, and that a single voice, unwavering, can echo far across the land. So when silence seemed the safer road, he chose another way instead. And whether one agrees or not, the question lingers still. What would we do if the cost of speaking was everything we had built? And would we remain silent, or would we stand? Your thoughts?
Well, thank you for this.
You're welcome. And thank you for what you've done. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Mayor Rosensweig and his family. It's dedicated to Mayor's brother, Shruggy's wife, Dee Dee, and their children for one of their sons, David's upcoming bar mitzvah. We celebrate a milestone of Torah, tradition, family, and faith. May David continue to grow in wisdom, kindness, and strength, bringing pride to his family and blessings to the Jewish people for many years to come. I want to thank my viewers and my listeners for watching this and hopefully listening very closely about the need for people to be strong, to be brave, to be courageous in light of cancel culture in our day and age, as Paul has done. And I want to make every effort from my heart, from my soul, to thank Paul for stepping up and defending the Jewish people in Israel. You are our friend. a much needed friend, and you are a brave, courageous human being. And we thank you for that. We embrace you for that. And we wish you well. We wish you well throughout all the days of your life. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my mother of blessed memory used to say, sei gesund, which means go in good health. So until we meet again, thank you very much for watching and for listening.